I basically do lead generation programs for 20 internal clients. That's basically my people that work for me as W-2 employees. I am here to provide a service for their desks. So what I do every day whenever I come into work is I automate and I grow. That's my number one mission.
This is another episode of the Automate and Grow podcast. My guest today is Jeremy Jenson, the CEO and founder of Encore Search Partners out of Texas. And today we're going to talk to Jeremy. He is another Inc. 5000 member, I guess you could say. Due to his phenomenal growth, has achieved status of being on the list. So Jeremy, I wanted to say thank you for joining me, and I appreciate you jumping on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks a lot for having me.
So we were talking a little bit before, and you've achieved quite a pivot in your business since 2010. And it sounds like when you started, you were kind of in a different business than you are today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So today I've got a 25-person executive search firm. So basically people pay me a lot of money to cold call people at their competitors and to twist their arm into taking a job interview with the company across the street, right? And so very lucrative business. The way that we charge our fees is we charge a percentage of the person's salary. So the more the person gets paid, the bigger our fee, kind of like a realtor. But yeah, when I first got into business back in 2010, I was 25 years old, started an email marketing company. I found a pretty cool niche of, capturing data from the internet, leveraging that data and segregating it to a target prospect list. And, for $2,500, $3,000 a month, I'd go to a company that sold a service or a product, and I'd basically do email blasts for them. And, mind you, this is back in 2010, 2011. And so, it was a little bit more on the forefront of email campaigning, not like all the big spam stuff that everyone's doing today, but built that business up to about $300,000 a year in revenue. It was me and kind of a sidekick. And, here I was in my mid-20s making $200K plus. And, man, I was working 60 hours a week. I had a baby on the way, and I said, golly, there's got to be a better way. And so audited my client base, looked like about half of my clients were staffing and recruiting companies. And I said, hey, I'm charging you $3,000. And you're making $90,000 a month off of the service that I provide. Let me cut out the middleman and start a recruiting company. So we decided to do that back in 2013.
I think there's a couple of interesting things there. So it's interesting that you pivot. You kind of understood what the bigger opportunity was. But it sounds like, you've achieved quite significant growth to the point, I think you said you're like a $6 million annual revenue now.
Yep.
You've done it without salespeople.
No salespeople, man. So you remember whenever I told you that I was a lead generation company for other companies, okay? So now I want you to visualize, I've got 25 people. Of those 25, 20 of them are recruiting professionals. And I basically do lead generation programs for 20 internal clients. That's basically my people that work for me as W-2 employees. I am here to provide a service for their desks in order for them to generate business development leads and candidate leads to recruit. So what I do every day whenever I come into work is I automate and I grow. That's my number one mission.
There you go. And you're doing that,
Yep.
You're saying, so normally in your business, there's two sides to that, which is the supply of talent, right? That fits a job. And then there's the people that need talent. And those are obviously two different customers. So you're saying the majority of your people are getting the talent side while you develop the business side?
Exactly. So visualize this, right? So if we know, hey, the market, there's a really big need for robotics engineers in the market, right? And so if an internal HR person posts a job on LinkedIn, CareerBuilder, Monster, Dice, Indeed, whatever resource they do, they may get 100 applicants, but they may not be qualified professionals. And so if you need an accountant, you might get a good candidate that was a really strong accountant that maybe his company went out of business or something along those lines, right? But with regards to certain niche verticals, we've identified that internal HR people have a very, very, very low probability of success off of a job post. And so we go out, we get the data sets to say, let's purchase a list of every single VP and director of robotics engineering for every single manufacturing and industrial company across the nation. So let's say it's 1,000 names, right? Name, title, email, direct dial phone number, tenure, whatever you want to, however acute you want to get that list down to. I may pay $5,000 for that. But through our marketing automation tools and the way that we target and remarket to those individuals, we share our story about being subject matter experts in their specific niche vertical. So by us direct marketing to people that fit a very, very finite niche demographic with very focused and intentional niche messaging, man, we get over a 40% open rate and we get over a 21% reply rate on our messages.
Wow.
And so we're going deep. Like I said, we're doing impression marketing. We're doing email marketing. There's a variety of different ways that we target the professionals that we do. Now, once that guy raises his hand, right? Medical device company in Greenwich, Connecticut raises his hand, says, Jeremy, can you help me find a product development engineer? Then schedule the call. I'm on the call. I'm facilitating that job order intake. I'm sharing the story about why Encore Search Partners is the firm that they need to partner with. And then I've got my senior recruiter in there with me who functionally is a subject matter expert in robotics engineering. And so it's funny, the $6 million in revenue that we do today, a lot of people think that, you know, we're super niche in one specific vertical, right? There's firms that only do accountants. There's firms that only do attorneys. Every one of my recruiting professionals, all 20, they are subject matter experts in something entirely different. I've got a guy that does investment bankers. I've got someone who does commercial bankers, someone who does partner level attorneys, associate level attorneys, robotics engineers, cybersecurity engineers, industrial automation salespeople. So when you actually become a subject matter expert in something to where the client is not only looking at you as a service provider, but actually as a solution architect, somebody that's going to provide really insightful advice, it becomes a no-brainer on who you're going to select. And so then the commodity almost does kind of become the marketing automation tool, because I'm just sharing a story about having subject matter expertise to where we can solve that client's pain.
So that's really interesting, because I think, you know, the one example that I'll use is, you know, there's lots of tools to your point, right? And there's lots of marketing automation platforms that do similar things. The one that's kind of grown is, for example, is ClickFunnels. And I think what's interesting about that isn't necessarily the technology, because there's competitors to that, but it's how they teach people to tell their story. And that's kind of what you're talking about, which is you're trying to cut through the static of being all things to all people while scaling different niches, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And now just with time, I have an individual contributor that accidentally becomes a team director because his client demand and the repeat business that they generate warrants having a junior person to support them, and then having another junior person, and then having another one. And so the largest niche vertical that we're in today is we recruit financial advisors. To our knowledge, we're the #2 size recruiting firm that actually is in that super niche vertical. And my VP over that group has a 9-person team that supports him.
Oh, wow. Okay. You've built up kind of a business within a business for each of these verticals, it sounds like.
And that's how we're going to do it, man. That's how we're going to do it. The core commonality is we recruit hard to find people. But granted, as you can imagine, there are tons of different industries that have hard to find people. Yep.
Right.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. You're back. You were like, Wait, so sorry, you focus on hard to fill industry niches, right?
Hard to fill industry niches. And then I've got a kind of a strategy to build a book of business around that individual.
My parlance, which is when I talk about a business that's looking to automate and grow, as you stated, the first thing is their traffic and conversion plan. And it sounds like part of that is, you know, the messaging, which you've got a very solid messaging for each of those niches. And then the automation piece is really just how you scale it. It seems that you're a living proof of that, really.
Absolutely. Now, granted, we are kind of at the mercy of that specific industry, right? To where if I'm building a division around somebody that recruits, let's say, industrial automation engineers, if something happens, maybe government policy or market dynamics where companies don't have an appetite to hire those types of people, we are kind of at risk, right, with regards to companies just completely going on hiring freezes. And that's the benefit of us being so diversified as an organization. We recruit attorneys, commercial bankers, investment bankers, engineers, whether they're mechanical, process, electrical, civil, structural, et cetera. We've really found that there are sort of, markets that are insulated from, being exposed to a market dip. And so that's what we've done in order to diversify, in order to just, hold ourselves accountable to having continued growth year over year. And so you'd mentioned that we were on the Inc. 5000 list this year. We were, I think we were like number 1,000. So that like the 1,000th fastest growing company in the U.S. We're on the list last year as well. I'm confident we're going to be on the list next year because of the way 2019 is shaping up. But man, I'll tell you, those companies that have been on this Inc. 5000 list for 7 years, 8 years, that is unheard of. Can you imagine maintaining that level of growth year over year over year over year? You would just think that companies would just start to plateau,
Right.
And so, I've got a chief operating officer that works for our organization who's tasked with managing everybody. And I have one direct report, and that's him. My job is solely focused on how do we grow, how do we innovate, how do we evaluate resources, tools, and technology in order to automate everything that we do.
I love it. That's an amazing example, and the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. Not to be
Absolutely
old school punny, but I'll touch on quickly one thing, which is are there any specific tools that you're using that you think have been critical to your success?
Yeah, so there's a few, right? I don't want to give away all the secret sauce to my competitors, right? But there's a tool, man. There's an awesome young guy out there. His name is Sean Finder, and he is the CEO and founder of a company called AutoClose with a K. And I'm going to say right now, if you don't follow Sean on LinkedIn, you're doing yourself a disservice, man. This guy has developed a technology that leverages a back-end database, right? So I want you to visualize the legacy Jigsaw platform,
right?
Data.com, right? When Salesforce bought them.
Which just shut down.
So picture 150 million contacts in the U.S. on the back end. That might be global contacts because 150 million business contacts seems unreasonable in the U.S.
Yeah.
But imagine going to the tool and saying, hey, I want to do a cadenced email marketing program, right? Up to 10 different cadenced automated follow-ups on specific time. And you could say, hey, look, send an email blast to every property and casualty insurance salesperson in Texas, Louisiana, or Mississippi that works for a company that's privately held that has in between 10 and 500 employees that has a .com email address, not a .net or a .org. I mean, there are so many different ways that you can segregate your data set without actually having to go out and buy the data. You're leveraging their own proprietary in-house database in order to do email marketing tools. So I don't know, guys, AutoClose, it's been a really good resource for us.
Definitely check it out.
It's a managed service. Yeah, it's a managed service. And so it's definitely not a capital expense where you've got to go and throw 40 grand, in order to get the tool. Sean probably hooked me up because he knew I was going to be a big promoter. So I won't tell you how much I pay because after this podcast, he may double the price.
Yeah, maybe, right?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
great. So that's a great tool, and we'll definitely include that in the show notes to check out. I want to be conscious of your time, and I really appreciate you sharing your story and kind of behind the scenes of how you've achieved such growth. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to touch on?
Yeah. So what I was going to comment on is one of the things that I'm struggling with is, we brought in, recruiting professionals that, we kind of sold it. Hey, we're going to give you the clients. We're going to give you the leads. Come in, follow our process, fulfill the orders, and you'll make a ton of money. And now that we've grown to the $6 million mark, one of the things that we've struggled with is, man, these guys are having trouble self-generating their own business development leads. And so one of the things that I'm toying with is even though I built my company by being a lead generation firm and by providing warm sales leads and candidate recruitment leads, do I need to bring in SDRs? Do I need to just go back and resort to old smiling and dialing, right? Because at the end of the day, I will say that while the number one way to do cold business development 15 years ago was just to call a CEO at his desk, and there's so many companies that are investing in marketing automation platforms and things of that nature, I have a sneaky suspicion that maybe the new way technology is to just pick up the phone and call the CEO at his desk. And so it's certainly not as profitable or as scalable. But I think if you do become a focused niche industry expert in something to where you don't need to make 1,000 phone calls to equate to one sale, if you do provide a solution where the market is salivating for that, or it increases revenue or decreases exposure or whatever your value proposition is, I tend to think that maybe we should just pick up the phone and make cold calls. What's your thought on that?
So
I know we want to automate and grow.
Yeah, I think
what do you think about making cold calls?
You're highlighting what is a big discussion by, I would say, sales professional type organizations. Yours fits right in that niche. And I think I've had this discussion really recently with some really smart guys. And I think the big, the one person who actually I did an interview with in my book, now that I think about it, he said his biggest fear is not having a new alternative, because the phone is less and less effective for them, but they use it very aggressively, but there's so many factors that are pushing back against that. And they do it, and it's a high volume game, and they try to warm it up, and they get really good at what those conversations are to convert. So it's a big piece of their puzzle, and they're in a similar type of sale, not same product, but the process, right? And they use marketing automation in a similar way, but the problem is, email deliverability is very challenging, and the phone is not getting easier. So I think what we're all talking about is what's the third alternative. And you mentioned one thing actually, which is interesting, which is how you have a very, very large LinkedIn following of 40,000 people. Do you use that as part of your sales process? And are you finding that you're able to generate similar conversations on LinkedIn? Is that part of your process, or is it mainly for
Yeah, so it's so funny. I'm going to give you my secret sauce on how I built a big LinkedIn following, and then I really encourage your listeners to implement this. So first off, I'm in the recruiting business, right?
Right.
So LinkedIn is a platform that's widely known as a resource if you're looking for a job or if you're looking to hire somebody. And so that in and of itself kind of gives me an upper hand to where people want to be connected to the CEO of a recruiting firm. I'll say whenever I do posts, I usually get anywhere from 40,000 views to my highest ever. I got 1.3 million views, over 11,000 likes,
Wow,
over 1,400 comments. And the foundation of that specific post had nothing to do with business. It was a post that said, I just got off the phone with my client, and when he was hanging up, he said, "Okay, I love you, bye."
I think I saw that post. I think I saw.
Yeah, you saw that post?
You know what? That's so funny you said that. I think
it's over 1 million views, man.
Yeah, I was one of them. That's funny.
And so I thought about it, and I was like, what the hell did he just say? So I texted him, and I said, "I love you too, man." And I sent him a kissy emoji. And then he was so embarrassed. Well, yeah, we've all done it. But hey, at the end of the day, man, your LinkedIn audience wants to develop a relationship with your persona. And if they want to click on your profile and see what the heck you do, and if they want to make the determination on whether or not you are a credible and skilled solution provider that can solve their pain, let's make it their decision, man. LinkedIn shouldn't be a platform to sell. It shouldn't be a platform to sell. It should be a platform to share ideas. Mm-hmm. It should be a platform to build and maintain professional connections. Let's leave the selling to good old fashioned following up on inbound leads and picking up the phone and being confident in the solution that you offer, and kind of just share what your unique value proposition is. But don't get me wrong, we utilize LinkedIn automation tools, but again, I'm not giving a pitch on those. I'm explaining who I am,
Right.
and I'm giving him an opportunity to connect with me. But so one of the ways that I built a big LinkedIn following is it's real simple, man. When I was first getting started in this business, and I got Salesforce.com, our very first CRM ATS applicant tracking system, I had probably 4,000 connections. I'd been in sales for about 3-4 years. They were all very rich connections in my city, decision makers or influencers. And I said, man, there's got to be a better way to build a bigger following. And so what I did was I built an automated template and an email trigger out of our Salesforce.com to where if somebody applied for a job, right? So let's say we were advertising a mechanical engineer job in Phoenix, Arizona. And when I post that job on ZipRecruiter, I get 140 applications. When those applications go into my applicant tracking system, a new contact record is created, right? And so upon any new contact record being created in my CRM, I sent an automated email template that said, "Hi, Mark. Thanks for applying for a job through Encore Search Partners. As you can imagine, we get hundreds of applications for each individual job post that we advertise, and our recruiters are going to pick the most qualified one per the client specifications to call. If indeed you have any problem with service or quality, please feel free to contact me directly. Here's my LinkedIn profile. I would encourage you to connect with me." And so when I hit the 30,000 limit, that thing just said, "Hey, I encourage you to follow me." And so basically, here I am automating somebody who just came into our funnel, not as a business development resource, but as a candidate that's looking for a job. And I'm being upfront and transparent by saying, "Hey, look, we may not call you. We may not help you. Our recruiters can only call the people that fit the client's target demographics. But in the meantime, let's connect. If you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have a concern, please feel free to reach out to me directly." And with that being said, people say, "Hey, Jeremy, what do you do all day? It looks like you just play around on LinkedIn." That's what I do. That's what I do. I create relationships. I have genuine friendships with people in New York and Chicago and Atlanta and LA and DC because we socially engage with one another and we support and inspire one another. But at the end of the day, I have a very, very important rule. And I think with your subject matter being automate and grow, we can't ever forget the human element.
Right.
I have a rule that if you send me a message, it doesn't matter who you are. I don't care if you are the African prince that wants to give me $3 billion because my great uncle died in Lagos, Nigeria, but I'm replying to your email. And these are our company core values. We implemented the entrepreneurial operating system about 3 years ago. It's called EOS.
I love it.
It is a business framework built on the foundation of a book written by Gino Wickman. The book is called Traction. That has been tremendous for our business, man, and it's forced us to identify and implement and hire, coach, and fire to our company core values. And being responsive and accessible is a core value. There are analytics around if a lead comes into your funnel, if you contact them within the first 5 minutes, you have greater than a 1,000% chance of closing them other than if you contact them the next day. And so responsive and accessible, exceed expectations, have a winning attitude, learn from mistakes, pay attention to detail. And it's taboo, man. People give me a hard time, but it's on the wall in our pit, chase the money.
Right. Well, what else do we do?
Don't work on activities. Yeah, don't work on activities that aren't revenue generating, man.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Don't work on activities that aren't, if you want to lunch with me and you don't make me money, sorry, we can have a phone call. Anytime I step out of this office for a lunch or for a face-to-face meeting, it's all a revenue generating activity. And so be respectful of your time, invest in resources and technology in order to automate and grow, but don't ever lose that human element. You need to make sure that you've got the labor and infrastructure to follow up on those leads immediately. It's going to separate you from the competition.
I love it. Well,
Yeah.
I really appreciate all of your insight. This is a treasure trove of really valuable feedback on how you've achieved so much, and it falls right in line with why people are listening. So I really appreciate your time, Jeremy. I'm going to wrap with one thing, which is when we have interesting guests on the podcast, we ask you to nominate another interesting guest. We typically talk to experts or entrepreneurs. Who would you, Jeremy, like to nominate as a future guest of the Automate and Grow
You
podcast?
got to call Sean Finder at AutoClose, man. I'm telling you, the guy is innovating something, man. And I've seen resources. I've seen Marketo. I've seen resources like that. I've seen HubSpot. And I think that, 7 years from now, we're going to be talking about AutoClose, just like we talk about HubSpot. This guy's coming up.
I love it. All right. Well, we will accept that nomination. Sean, you've been nominated as a future guest, and we will take that introduction and look forward to a future episode with Sean from AutoClose. Thank you, Jeremy. I really appreciate your time.
Excellent, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem. This has been another episode of the Automate and Grow podcast. We will see you on a future episode of Automate and Grow.